Record.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Areej Akhtar and I'm the ACD for WHO at LUMUN.
Hi everyone, my name is Owais Sabri and I'm also the AC for WHO at LUMUN.
Right, so in this tutorial, we will be elaborating upon the procedure of writing, formatting, and researching for a position paper. And more importantly, we will be discussing some of the ways through which you can lend uniqueness and complexity to your position paper, which will benefit you in the committee by establishing your credibility within it and drawing the dice's attention towards you. However, before we delve into these details, I am going to address the basics of a position paper, starting with what it exactly is. So, a position paper is also known as a policy paper, and it is essentially a strategic document that gives an overview of the position of the delegate's country on the topic, their country's relation to the topic, and the proposals of policies to be passed in a resolution. Now, the position paper is one of the most important components of MUNs because it is the it is the pinnacle of the preparation process for any model United Nations conference, since it affords an opportunity to the delegates to communicate to the committee chairs their country's unique understanding of the issue being discussed and to illustrate their country's previous relationship with the topic, and also to provide a direction towards the policies and ideas that their country would like to see in the resolution. So, writing a position paper that accurately reflects your stance within the committee and that informs your chairs of your position is very important because it allows you to create a favorable first impression on the chair. And because the dice oversees the committee from the start to the finish, as a delegate, you would want to draw their attention towards yourself and your propositions in the committee by establishing them beforehand in a well crafted position paper. And in this tutorial, apart from discussing the structure, style, and research methods for a position paper, we will also be looking at ways through which you can make your position paper more memorable so that it resonates with your chairs during the conference and gives you an edge in the committee. Now, Wes will be very briefly explaining the formatting and the structure of a position paper.
All right. So moving right into how to write a position paper. So obviously, when you hear the word position paper, there's so many different ideas around about how you have to write a position paper, what you have to do for it. And I feel like we feel like at Lumen that it's not really rocket science, right? It's just three core fundamental ideas, which are essentially just one paper, one page long, and you do not have to go further than one page, right? And we feel like all the information that a chair needs, the committee needs, is enough. And one page is enough for that, right? So we start with the first point of a position paper, which is the country and the country's position on the topic, right? So this is essentially your introductory paragraph, right? So if you were a person inside the committee, you would tell about yourself, right? So now that you're a country inside the committee, you would tell about your country, right? So this may not be a big deal if you're a country like the United States of America or the United Kingdom, but if you're countries like Burkina Faso or countries which are not very popular in the major circuit or countries that are not very known to the average person, this is something which is incredibly helpful for different people inside the committee, and this is something which is incredibly helpful for the chair because they understand that what your country stands for, right? And then you kind of seep in the topic of the entire committee inside that first paragraph, right? So you talk about what your country's stance is on the topic. And over here, you have to understand that the writing style needs to be diplomatic, right? So you have to have some sort of, every time you have to use the words that you have in your vocabulary to paint a good picture of your country, because essentially this is a report of your country to the United Nations in the end, right? It's a very formal document. It's a document that needs to be submitted on time, essentially, right? So it has to be very, very formal, and it has to be very diplomatic in the sense that it shows your country's better side to the United Nations. Secondly, when we talk about the country's previous actions on the topic, this is essentially every single thing that the country has done regarding the topic at hand, right? So this is essentially now we're seeping more of the topic inside your own stance, and that you see that's a progressive thing inside the position paper. So in the second paragraph, if you have not done anything, you still have to give a good light of your country, right? So you may say that we believe that this is something that we want to do, and this is something that we have done in such and such way. So if there's nothing tangible, you can even mention any sort of draft resolution that your country may have been a signatory of, or any sort of draft resolution that your country may have tried to implement inside your inside your own country. which you feel like can show some sort of credibility of your country. You just have to use the vocabulary at your hand to make sure that the chair knows the best side of you, right? And the committee knows the best side of you. That's the job of position paper in the end. And thirdly, the proposal of policies to pass in a resolution. This is essentially the most technical part of position paper. Everything else was very basic, but this is where you start to sort of start getting into the technical parts. And better the third paragraph is, the better the chance that you have of better, getting a good award. So essentially, in this paragraph, position paper, you essentially say what you plan to do as a country, right? And this is more metaphorical and literal as well. Literal in the sense that what you plan to do with the country, with the country inside that committee, right? So you talk about one major solution or two, not more than that, and you talk about that solution, right? You introduce that solution, and you make that solution your own, right? So the chair then goes over that solution, and then he or she sees your speeches, and they recognize you. You have to use every single opportunity in an MUN to turn the tides in your favor, and this is just one of the many opportunities that you could get. Areej?
Right. So now we're going to discuss the component for researching for a position paper, which I think is one of the most important parts of a position paper, because a well-researched position paper illustrates to the chair that you have a very thorough and strong understanding of the topic at hand, and it also demonstrates that you have come prepared to the conference. So the first and foremost part is reading and referencing from the study guide. So obviously, I think this goes without saying that your study guide is kind of like your gospel for the preparation of any MUN conference. This is because, firstly, I think you find all the relevant and important information relating to the committee's topic in one single document. So you don't necessarily have to scour the internet for sources and information in order to develop your stance or lend credibility and validity to your position. And while reading and referencing from the study guide, you also sort of are able to navigate across a direction that has been provided by the dais in terms of what they want to see in the committee and what kind of expectations they have from delegates. More importantly, let's say for example, the karma, or more specifically known as the questions to consider for a resolution, they also allow you to sort of orient the proposals that you make in the final paragraph of your position paper towards a precise and comprehensive expectations or outlines that have been put forth by the dais. Secondly, the other important part for researching for a position paper is finding your country's position. Now, while researching about the stance that your country has regarding a particular topic, I think one of the important things is to investigate and research the speeches made by the leaders of your government or your country, from which you can pick up remarks that have been made regarding the topic that is being discussed in your committee. And you can assess how these remarks reflect the policies or the stance of that country on that topic. Next, I think programs or any initiatives and any schemes that have been orchestrated by your government and your country in order to tackle the issue that is being discussed in the committee, and in order to assess the impact of the issue that is being discussed in the committee, can also be important in it can also help you engaging the stance of your country on the topic being discussed. Then any events that your country or government has hosted relating to the topic being discussed, or any UN events that your country has attended, can also illustrate whether your country is in support or in opposition of the topic being discussed in the committee. Lastly, I think any reports, official reports that have been published by your committee, by your government or your country, that illustrate the magnitude of the issue that is being discussed within your country, or any initiatives, or the impact of any initiatives that have been taken by your country in order to tackle or reduce the impact of the issue that is being discussed. Thirdly, I think it is very, because there's a plethora of resources on the internet, so it is important that you map out a very efficient and effective strategy, and you're able to prioritize the information that you're coming across and pick only those bits that are relevant to your position paper, because there is a word limit that you are working with, and you cannot incorporate chunks of information. So when you're incorporating information in your position paper, it is important to keep in mind that whatever stance you advocate for in the committee itself during the conference, it's important that there is some consistency between that stance and the stance or the policy recommendations that you make in the final paragraph of your position paper. That is one of the most important components of strategic writing, because this illustrates to the chair that there is some degree of consistency in your thinking pattern or the way you are trying to tackle this issue within the committee. And lastly, while you're creating solutions and proposals, that is when you come to the final paragraph. Again, this allows you to be very creative and like create or design your own solutions and your own policies that you think are most apt in order to tackle with the issue. Of course, you can take into consideration any future policy recommendations that your country has officially made, but at the same time, you have full autonomy to be as creative as you want to, as long as you're being very analytical and you're able to assess and evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the stance or the policy recommendations that you're making. So if there are any limitations to your policy recommendations, there's any financial or political constraints that might crop up, as long as you're analyzing them and evaluating them and also proposing any solutions to offset these constraints, you're allowed to be as creative with your solutions and proposals as you want to. And now Uwais is going to expand upon the qualities of a good position paper and how you can make your position paper stand out.
Hmm. All right. So up till this point, you've learned what a good position paper is, right? You've learned what every single person would do with some sort of research, to varying degrees of success, right? Some would, maybe not divide it into these three concise paragraphs. Some would do it in some other way. Some would maybe use some facts somewhere, some figures. But this slide is what changes a good position paper to a great position paper, right? And I mean, remember again, the position paper is the first thing that the chair would see of you, right? So you have to make a good impression inside an MUN. And I feel like position papers are the perfect avenue to do that, right? So the first thing that you have to do is to make your position paper memorable, right? And this can be a very vague word. What really is memorable, right? So essentially, it is something that sticks in the chair's mind. And to be memorable, you have to be extraordinary in some way. And it's not hard to be extraordinary in position paper. Here's what you do to make your position paper more memorable. One, your writing style matters. So make sure that you bring your A game in terms of your writing style. Two, it is formatted well, right? So there has to be some sort of format. You put it should show that you have put some sort of effort into the position paper that you're presenting, right? Because position papers are incredibly important, especially in the end when their awards are tied. The chairs may use the position paper and see that which delegate put more effort into the position paper, right? So the effort should show. There should be a country flag. There should be enough, formatting to it. You should have your name, your country's name, your committee's name, your topic's name, agenda's name, right? All of these count as formatting. All of these count as good formatting, right? So you have to make sure that their formatting is good. And thirdly, everything should be in its right place, right? So as we said, that the first paragraph has to be the introductory and the stance paragraph, right? And the second paragraph has to be the current actions and previous actions paragraph. And the third paragraph is your essentially planning ahead paragraph, right? And your solution-based paragraph. So if you start your first paragraph with a solution-based paragraph, that would immediately get off the flow of it, right? It will ruin the flow of a good position paper, of a potentially good position paper, and that would eventually make it less memorable. So a good position paper flows well. It reads like one concise document, and it has good, as good as you can English, and because English is the main language of modern nations around here. To make a position paper concise, you really have to make sure that you are putting in as much content in little space as possible, right? You obviously don't have to cram it, but you have to make sure that there's enough content that the committee knows what you believe in, what you have done, and what you plan to do, right? And I would recommend to not go over the length of one page, because one page is more than enough for you to have enough content for your own representation. Because the position paper is not everything, right? Position paper is just the introduction of what you plan to do. It's similarly a microcosm of your entire performance with everyone, right? So that please make sure that you do not have more information than it is needed, right? Because at that point, it does not remain memorable. Because our eventual goal is to make the position paper memorable for the chair. And then it does not remain memorable because it's just a tedious task to read that position paper. So make sure that it hits that sweet spot between not too short and not too big. It's like the perfect size is a one-page position paper, in my opinion, and the opinion of many other chairs. Thirdly, we have to make sure that the position paper predicts the delegate's stance in the committee. And this relates to the entire position paper, but relates to the third paragraph most importantly, because this is where you kind of tell them that, oh, this is my country's this is my country's position that it's going to be throughout the committee, right? We're going to argue for this. This is the framework that we're trying to push, right? So essentially choose one framework or two framework and put them in, right? And then build on them. And that's what the stance over here means. This is not the stance that is going to be in your first paragraph or second paragraph. This is going to be the stance that is in the third paragraph, which shows how your country would function inside the committee, right? So this shows to the chair a very important thing. This shows that you as a delegate are prepared. You as a delegate have thought ahead to the next 2, 3, 4 days. Obviously, MUNs are unpredictable, but the accuracy to which you can predict them is the difference maker between a good delegate and a great delegate, and a good position paper and a great position paper. Lastly, we highly recommend you guys to put some solutions in the third paragraph, not cram them with solutions, but obviously one or two memorable solutions which the chair can associate to you. But important thing here is that a great delegate always evaluates the solutions, right? He or she tells us where, how that solution would be implemented. Who will be the person who will be funding that like solution? Is there any problems with that solution that you may plan to discuss in the committee? So that is how position paper differs from other sort of documentation which is working with a draft resolution. When you're writing a position paper, you have the entire conference ahead of you, right? So you can essentially plan for the entire conference. So when you evaluate the solutions you propose, you're essentially telling the chair that you're aware that a solution cannot be perfect as long as it has been discussed again and again, and as long as it has not had proper fleshing out. And that's what this part is all about. You tell them that the solution is not perfect, but it is the best possible solution in that situation, and then you build upon that. And this, I mean, in the end, please think of position paper as the first building block to a great delegate and to a great MUN conference, right? And that is what is, if you don't have that good building block in the first place, it's going to be really hard to, build a good building over it. So yes, that is it from our side. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you soon. Thank you.